what harmful narratives do you try to dispel with your art?
A lot of the political dialogue around being an Afghan has always been associated with being a third world citizen, literally a savage or a barbarian or literally inhumane, as we've been described. And accompanying that is a very deep, gross misunderstanding of what it is to be an Afghan woman, the beauties that are within our own household and how we empower each other. And a lot of my work is about bringing the humanity back and the love back into the lives and experiences of Afghan people.
Welcome to the Narrative Disruption Podcast. Welcome, everybody. My name is Joseph Green, and this is Narrative Disruption, the podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, and I mean that in every way that you think of special. Special to me as an individual, special to this planet as an artist and a human being, and I think special in what she has to offer us as far as her role as a narrative disruptor in the work that she does. And I cannot be more excited to welcome to the Narrative Disruption Studio, Marjan Naderi.
Marjan Naderi is my name. Hi, nice to see you again, Joseph. Sound is good. We're like making sure it's high. Does it sound good right now?
That was a joke. I hope that makes it into the show. Okay, so this podcast has some form to it, and we sent you the questions beforehand. But the first part is just like, how do we know each other, and why would you decide to do this podcast? So let's start with, how do we know each other on your point of view, and why you decided to do this podcast?
I met Joseph LMS Green, the poet, the host, the MC, the cool poetry guy at Hayfield when I was a student of Brian Hannon's. And you were an alumni of Hayfield, but you were working a lot in the poetry space there and creating different opportunities for young people to perform. And I would see you around, and your stage presence was unique because I hadn't encountered someone so alive and vibrant. And it was also my first real introduction to the spirituality of a poetry space. And you conducted that so well. And so I was naturally a little drawn to you as a very eager young poet. And I knew that you were besties with Brian Hannon, so that gave me the verification check that you're a cool person. But yeah, you just continued to host, and I continued to show up, and now we're long friends. But the most significant interaction I had with you was when you were wrapping up a video shoot at Hayfield, and you asked me out the blue, how certain are you that you believe in God? And I gave you a really intense, you asked me completely out the blue, and I was right now, maybe a 8.5, something like that. And then we walked a little bit to the elevator, and you caught me again, and then you said, now, how certain are you that your religion is the right religion for believing in God? And I was on a scale of 1 to 10, I just met this man. And at the time I was wearing a headscarf, a hijab as well. So I imagine that's what piqued your curiosity. But it was the first time I had to bring a number or a quantity to God. And I gave you a 7.8 because I was I'm definitely on the right track, but I'm not a fully developed adult to know that this is my path. And that question sent me on a long philosophical deep dive into God. And now I'm studying that in university. So you were definitely a moment where there was Marjan before Joseph LMS Green, and then there was Marjan after Joseph LMS Green. Yeah.
Oh man. So much to unpack with that. I think I'm going to start with my recollection of our knowing each other, and then I want to ask you about what you just said. Okay. I remember you, and I remember your energy in a manic way, but not in I think this young person needs help, but I think the same energy and light or whatever that you saw in me, I saw in you, right? And I didn't have that when I was your age. And so I think I'm always attracted to young people who, whether or not it's it's hard earned, but they have a sense of themselves way before I did. And I'm always curious about that. And I think that my questioning you in that moment was less like the annoying person wanting to get into like a religious conversation, and more of, I wonder if that sense of self comes from your faith and religion. Because even back in whatever this is, 2015, whatever, when 16, you know, young people wearing hijabs in schools, you know, we're still in like a post 9/11 America. And I think that is something where I'm like, your faith has to be at a certain level to walk the world with a physical representation of that faith, knowing that that's going to change people's perception of you in conversation and so on and so forth. And so to still be as, not, I don't want to say sure of yourself, but like open to people, and but also wearing this garment that has such symbolism to it. I think that's where my curiosity came from, and I don't think that has ever changed about you, whether you're wearing hijab or not. There's a light that emanates from you in spaces that makes people curious. I just wonder, how does it feel to be you?
At that point when you had met me, I had only engaged with Muslim Americans, with Afghans, with being a Muslim was so core to my identity. And I am and was so proud to know that I can carry this tradition that my mother has instilled in me so well. And I sincerely have always loved Islam for the philosophical and intellectual breadth and knowledge that it offers. And of course, the poetry that's like so entwined in that. Like one of the greatest saints and scholars, like who's also the best-selling poet in America, Rumi, they call him, or Jalaluddin Balkhi, which is his name back home. He was a Muslim scholar and poet. From my mother's side, we are descendants from an also very well-known poet named Jami. And so that embedment of Islam and being Afghan into my very bones and my core memories is something I can never split apart. And because my mother was such a strong figure of that morale, I wanted so badly to emanate her and to be like her. And so my scarf was a way of being like my mom, and I look straight like her. Like I was spitting reflection in her image. And so much of my poetry is bred from my love of my mother. And so much of the love that I have for the world, it was being Muslim and in those Muslim communities that I could engage with people who cared about me like their own child, even when they weren't my blood parents. And that openness that I had for Muslims carried me into the academic space that was a public high school like Hayfield. And so Hayfield being very diverse, I did wear my headscarf, and I felt like this diverse home that is Hayfield, my school, is where I can feel safe and safe enough to wear my headscarf. Where going outside of school without my counselors that were people of color and my teachers and my poetry teachers, it was really scary. But that base of pride that my people instilled with me, I could carry elsewhere too. But as you know, throughout the years, my relationship with God has changed. My idea of what God and religion and culture and spirituality is has become more refined. And since I left Hayfield, since I left my home base, that is my mother, my association with being a Muslim and my identity as a Muslim has also changed and in a way kind of morphed into something that wasn't so culturally rigid as it was before. And I see my headscarf as something that was a symbol of my faith, which is still a deep part of who I am, but the connotations that would carry when I would engage with people for the first time was also very difficult.
We've talked about this before. We sent you the questions. We kind of gabbed about it before the show. What is, I know, one of many things that I'm sure are in your list of values, but what is one thing that you value? And explain it to us.
Uh, when I thought about the question, I immediately was connected to my training as a spiritual student under Imam Fode, and he teaches the 7 characteristics that God loves. They orient the disposition towards excellence and spirituality. And one of those characteristics is tawakkul. And tawakkul is a word that's used to describe a deep, relentless trust in God and his plan for you. And essentially this brings the heart into a stillness, and you're able to behold peace in the face of calamity and chaos. And so the value that's very core to my being and that I really work on is tawakkul.
What I love about this, and when we were talking about this earlier, it jumped in my head all of the civil rights leaders and participants to those protests and marches. Recently, just last year, we had an opportunity to follow the John Lewis leadership program from John Lewis High School here in Northern Virginia on a pilgrimage to Selma. And we got to see a lot of footage, talk to a lot of people who lived through it. And that peace, that stillness amongst the chaos was something that I saw in a lot of the faces of the people who participated. There's a famous picture, and I'm not going to remember the woman's name, unfortunately, right now. The Arkansas 6 or 7, I get the number mixed up sometimes, but there's that picture of the woman, and she has a scarf on and sunglasses, and she's walking to school, and there's like 90 to 150 like angry white folks around her. Yeah. And if you look at her face, you're like, how are you that with all of that happening around you? And that is a deep faith. I'm not going to say what her faith is in, but there's a deep faith and a belief that this is supposed to be happening. I'm supposed to be here. And if I allow myself to get taken up in the chaos around me, I'm not going to be able to fulfill my destiny, what I'm supposed to be doing here. So I obviously wasn't, not obviously, but I wasn't familiar with that term before you said it, but I am familiar with that idea. And I think a lot of oppressed people who've had to fight back against how ugly humanity has to be to try to subvert people, like they know that peace, because it's the only way to push through the madness of oppression, of slavery, of bigotry, of racism, of Islamophobia, so on and so forth. All right, so part of this process of knowing the value, we ask folks to take us back in story form to a time where they first saw this value happen, right? And I say first time you can recollect, or the most, poignant time in your brain. So please, can you tell us a story about someone in your life that showed you this value? And through that, hopefully we can connect to why it's so important to you, and maybe even to us. I mean, we didn't even know it.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier, my mother is like the paragon of lovers. She's endured a lot of self-sacrifice to give us a great deal of comfort, and mothers kind of must get into that position regardless of the circumstance, because they are the true sole primary providers for their children. And when the world demands that of you, a woman, I feel, can really get into that very, very smoothly. And the reason why I would bring it to a linguistic wisdom in the Quran, and there's a name of God named Rahman, and Rahman means merciful. But the root word of Rahman means womb, and it is Raham, the womb of a mother. And before Muslims start any task, they start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate, the hyperbole of mercy. And in fact, it is the womb of God that we are initiating every moment in. And it is in the womb that the spirit is first blown into. It requires a peace, a stillness to properly develop, to nurture. It is in absolute darkness, the spirit of the depths, like Carl Jung would call it. And it is from there that mercy in life emerges. My mother, as a woman, I think can tap into that innate mercy, that disposition of depth, carry that throughout the world. And I remember throughout our life, we've had a lot of chaotic, of course, like displacement and movement, and she's a refugee and she's finally getting settled. But whenever there was a moment of calamity amidst marital problems or people dying back home or our family not being able to reach us here, she would always just say, if I had cried every time I was sad, there wouldn't be enough water in my body to live. And so instead, I drink the water. I thank God for the gratitude of the water, and this is enough for me. And that very simple, small palette of gratitude that grounds her back into that stillness and that disposition is a reoccurring character quality that I see in her, and is attached to many, many stories.
I would love to hear how your mother reacted to a moment, like a specific moment in your life.
Yeah.
If you don't mind sharing.
Of course. As you know, my mother is from Afghanistan, and we're from a particular area named Herat. And Herat is a really beautiful city, and we're kind of in the middle of all this geography. There's a great deal of rich history there, the heart of the Silk Road, graveyard of empires. And there, for very long, the Taliban was not able to take complete control of the city. Many speculate it's because it's so holy. My mother is also on that boat, but that's where our family is from. Our family has houses there. Our family have been there. But when Biden had withdrew U.S. troops out of Afghanistan, very quickly the Taliban takeover had begun to swarm the country. And one of the very last cities was indeed Herat. And I remember day after day, my mother would be calling the orphans that we sponsor, asking how they're doing, wondering if the media and the news that they're seeing online is an accurate portrayal. Is it possible that the Taliban could actually be really good? We don't know what's going on, and every province is so different. But it was when the final strike from the Taliban had happened and Herat was taking over and the women were escorted back into their homes and buildings had shut down, that my mother was on the phone with my two cousins who now live with me, and they said, yeah, like it's over for us, like our city, our history, our mosque is gone. And they were crying and they were weeping over the phone. And of course there's so much death and tragedy that comes with a violent takeover like that, but that's when she had her line and she told them right over the phone, my loves, if I had cried every time my heart had felt grief, I would not have enough water in my body to live. And so she made chai and we sat down and we just kept them on the phone and we drank our tea in gratitude. And that was her way of grounding us and bringing the peace of mercy back into the moment.
Thank you for sharing that story. There's a lot there. But I think that every culture has their symbolisms of hope, their sayings of hope, of resilience. And I can think of my mother staying with us right now for a couple of weeks. And I have so many stories about her being that resilient person. Actually, one of the stories in the book about her taking me to pick up my father from jail after his second DUI. I don't focus on this in the poem because the poem is about my father. But if I rewrote the poem from my mother's point of view, her face that entire morning, her face when my father apologized, and just to know, and I have explored this in other pieces, just how much my mother has been through. And I wrote this poem for my mom and I shared it with her, a different poem. And she said, I didn't know you could see me. Right. And I think it's so important for us to be able to go back and intentionally explore these memories from time to time so that we can see these people, because they become different things as they get older, that life, sickness, reality, all of these things come into play and it kind of changes. But like there have been these moments where we've learned our perseverance from these figures and how powerful it is and reassuring. And they're also a reminder that the little ones are looking at us now for that same sort of stoic ability to get through the hard times. I guess the last general question, I guess, that I wanted to ask you was, part of what we do with narrative disruption is try to use our lived experience to dispel harmful narratives about ourselves that the world may have. And by ourselves, I mean an identity point, whatever it is that may be of detriment to you or people who share your identity. What harmful narratives do you try to dispel with your art?
A lot of the political dialogue around being an Afghan has always been associated with being a third world citizen, literally a savage or a barbarian, or literally inhumane, as we've been described. And accompanying that is a very deep, gross misunderstanding of what it is to be an Afghan woman, the beauties that are within our own household and how we empower each other. And a lot of my work is about bringing the humanity back and the love back into the lives and experiences of Afghan people. I feel like as a young person, now that my parents are getting older, I have to teach them a lot of little joys that they can return back, or things to be proud of once again. Because even my father, as a brown man in America, he does not receive respect from people when he walks into a space. He's usually feared. And so bringing life back into his joy and his love, and my mother as well, I think is a really big component of why I write about my homeland, my country, with such pride, even when a lot of international forces have attempted erasure of our land and our history.
All right, so rapid fire. So everyone, welcome to the rapid fire. I don't have a cool name, but hopefully you'll think of one and put it in the comments part of our show, where I ask 5 questions and our guests ask me 5 questions, and it happens all within like a 4-minute period of time. Right now, we call it the rapid fire question portion of the show, which for 2 poets, we should be better at. However, we'll get there. Okay. All right. So sweet. Oh, you're ready. You want to start?
No, I want you to start.
I'm going to start. Okay. So it's going to go, I'm going to give you all 5 in a row, and then you give me all 5 in a row. No, you want to go back and forth? We'll go back and forth.
Okay.
We planned this. Back and forth. All right. Here's the first question. I hit the mic, and my thing's coming off. Here we go. First question. What's your favorite type of shoe to wear?
My favorite type of shoe to wear is a Vibram, and it's a 5-toe shoe, and it's really supportive for your back muscles and your tibialis and your structure and your posture, and I wear it when I run. My question to you is, what is your favorite Rihanna song?
My favorite Rihanna song is the song from Wakanda Forever. Good choice. It does so much for me. Like it enraptures, it encapsulates my entire love and personal relationship with the Wakanda Black Panther franchise as it pertains to my family and my sons, and it's just everything. All right, my question for you is, would you rather be a pop star or a movie star, and why? In 2 sentences. It's a rapid fire question.
My answer is I would rather be a pop star, because I fear the personality dissociation and psychological turmoil that comes with taking on many roles as a movie star, because I would definitely act as the crazy person in the film.
Period.
My question to you is, if you had 24 hours to create a piece of art for your children and offspring to reflect on, what would it be? What would you create?
I would create an installation that would invite them to create a piece of art based off of the piece of art that I created. So whatever I did in that 24 hours wouldn't be complete until they put their personality, artistic stamp into it. So greater than that, more specific than that, I can't tell you what that would be, but it would be something that we would have to collaborate in for it to feel complete. All right. All right. We're on, I said, pop star. Question three. What has been the most impactful piece of art for you in the past year? Like that you witnessed, that you've gone and seen? Book, read, music, movie, poetry slam. Yeah, something that smacked you in the face. This is supposed to be.
The problem is that I have the answer. It's that I'm so nervous. I can't come up with the title of the piece. I think it's called Pretty Little Things, Ugly Little Things. Rami Youssef is in it. He's incredible. But the movie? The movie. Is that what it's called? Pretty Little?
I have no idea, but we can look it up and then we'll put it properly under the screen when it's done.
Okay.
So who's in it?
Rami Youssef is in it, and there are other actors whom I don't know because I only have like a database for Muslim Americans in my mind. But it was an exceptional film. The writing was so refreshing because a lot of recent media does not bring a lot of attention to the character development, but every character, every line was exquisite, and it really hit the spot. So that's my recommendation. My question to you is similar in terms of art, but in your time as a mentor, give me one poem that really stuck out to you and from the pool of students you've worked with, or a line.
So the poem that jumps on, what was that gesture you made?
Rapid fire.
All right.
I'm sorry.
All right, so this is going to go in uncut.
Run.
The producer of the show is like, dude, we called it rapid fire. It said we need a different name then. We need like impromptu question time, so we don't have to worry about how fast we answer.
Okay.
All right. So the poem that's at the front of my head is it's between Amina and Kenny, but it's definitely like a hyperbole moment. I'm gonna go with Kenny. And he does this poem about Saturday afternoon in DC. And there's a moment where I feel like I witnessed Kenny become Kenny, like the performer that he is now. Because the poem, and it's online, you can look it up, hyperbole, like whenever. But yeah, Kenny Carroll. And he is doing the poem, and he's like his like contained like young black nerd self. And then, like at some point he just like rips into the poem, and like the entire crowd gets into it, and I'm like, a star is born. And it's not to say that's the first time he ever like got into a poem, but like, it was just something about that moment. And I've seen that poem so many times, and I've talked to that poem so many times. That's my favorite part of being a teacher, or even just someone who creates space for other people. When you see someone step into their voice, we don't give people voice. We create space for them to step into it. And when you see that happen, it's the greatest feeling in the world. All right, fourth question. What's your favorite color lipstick?
It is a magenta light pink. That is my favorite color lipstick.
Boom, rapid fire.
My question to you is, how many times have you broken your glasses?
I have broken my glasses. No, in my lifetime, I can remember. Wow, because these stand out because I've never broken my glasses at a convenient time, like where like I was at home and I had another pair that I could grab. It was always like out in the world where I was like screwed. So at least 6 times I've broken my glasses. So much so that I think I did it twice as a young person, and then my mother got me what they call sports glasses.
Oh yeah.
And if you know who Horace Grant is, you can look him up. I think some people still wear them today, but it's like these thick plastic glasses that you wear when you play sports. I had to wear those to school for like a half a school year because my mother refused to buy me new glasses. All right. 5th and final question. What do you want to be when you grow up?
I would like to be exceptional mother and a poet and teacher. Yeah, right now I'm doing research in neuroscience, but that's only because I'm a nerd. But professionally, what I want to do and be, I want to be a full artist and mother.
I don't think we can. I don't think we're capable of answering the question. Maybe rapid fire is not the right thing for me. Like you answered the question and you're like, but also I'm going to mention no.
No, it's a part of my career. But my final question to you is, what is your favorite thing about August and one thing about Henry?
My favorite thing about August is that he is a live nerve. He feels emotion to a level that I wish I still could. And I inspire to be as in touch with my surroundings as he is. Like, it can get really frustrating as a parent to have a kid that is so emotional.
Alive.
But like, it's very similar to your mother. Like, I could get angry about that, or I could find gratitude in the fact that he feels, and he's reminding me how important it is for me to feel. And then Henry, oh man, his undying curiosity about the nature of art, and his respect and desire to be great, but not perfect. If that makes sense. Like, he wants to be proficient in his own mind. But he's not just studying other artists to be like, I want to do exactly what this person does because this is great. It's like, I'm going to take what I need. I'm going to take what I need. I'm going to take what I need. And I'm searching. Like, he knows at 10 that he is searching for his own voice as an artist. And I don't know where my children came from. But I'm so happy the universe put them in my life, because this part of my life has been made so much more rich by having them in it. Dad joke.
My girlfriend told me that I should start working out more, and so I did a lunge, and that was the right step forward. That was a really bad execution because I'm